Yabba Dabba Do, Phil. We are back and it's 3 points, but boy, was that tough nearly at the end. But Obday Dabbagh to the rescue.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard you that positive an intro in a while, Glenn. That took me by surprise.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
hopefully I didn't shout straight down the mic. But welcome back to Sunday Night Live. Um, Coming to you a little bit early, obviously, with the Celtic game coming up on Tuesday, but live here on the YouTube channel, reacting to yesterday's 1-0 victory over Kilmarnock. So myself and Phil will be looking back on that 3 points picked up for the Dons, and then also preview that trip to Parkhead as well. So lots to discuss, Phil, but yeah, always helps when we've got 3 points to chat about as well.
yeah, no, it's good to try and get back in the swing of positive episodes. I seem they've been sorely missed not only by us but by people that have to listen to our moans and groans for the most part. But yeah, great to come off the back of those 3 points.
Yeah, and I think, we'll obviously get into it a little bit as well, but the performance may not have been at its very best, which I'm sure we'll discuss, but we're churning out victories. Okay, yes, only three in a row, but it's better than what we've been used to. But before we kind of do get into the crux of the matters of yesterday, I want to kind of comment, of course, on the fact that yesterday the club celebrated their annual Aberdeen Community Trust Day. And there's a lot been going on to support the community trust beforehand. There was a food drive in association with Seafine, and I think the community trust does a lot of great work. People maybe see a charity associated to the football club, but this goes deeper into a lot of local communities, into schools as well. Um, and a lot of fantastic work is done. Obviously, if you're watching us live tonight or on catch up, you'll see along the bottom we've got our teletext banner back for this episode. If you text Aberdeen to 70085, you'll donate £5 directly to the community trust. And I did it before we went live tonight. Phil, tell me if that's come on screen now.
That has indeed.
So you can see there, it still does work. It was an initiative that was going on yesterday during the game. So I'm going to ask that if anyone's watching the live tonight or listening on catch up, text Aberdeen to 70085. Comment in the section along when you've done that as well, and let's show our support to the community trust as well. So again, great to see a fantastic turnout as well, and a really well organised display as well.
Yeah, no, it's great to see the community trust getting, a bit more of that visible promotion on a match day, because they are a great charity, obviously. One that we've kind of supported through the podcast
Mm-hmm.
earlier on, obviously with Movember as well. And one as well that, likes of Angus and Leighton Clarkson are quite good champions of. So do it for the memory of Angus now that he's down at Exeter.
I also tell you, I also am a big fan of our Community Trust Day kits as well. That was another cracker.
Yeah,
Very plain, very simple, but so much better with white stripes on our kit rather than grey.
it's one of those things where I get why they don't market them as kits to buy, but
Mm.
God, if they sold them with the money going to the community trust, I could guarantee they'd make a wad, because the amount of comments I saw on Twitter of folk
Mhm.
asking if they could be bought outside of the match worn auction. Yeah, it would be great maybe one year to see a standalone community trust shirt.
Yeah, I think they are missing a trick by not doing it. I saw obviously Mikey Rennie, he's doing the kilt walk, raising funds for the community trust as well, and wanting to purchase a kit so he could walk and show it off. But yeah, definitely missing a trick, because even the one last year, which had the city skyline, that was a cracker as well. Right, let's talk about all things football. As expected, well, I say as expected, like we are experts on this matter. We discussed, let's go with that, on last week's show, the possibility of once again naming an unchanged side, but maybe predicting the change would be in goals. That was what happened. Dimitar Mitov coming in for Ross Duhan. No real surprises with the outfield 10 remaining the same, though, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely not. I think Dimi is obviously a welcome return in the squad. Just with the length of absences he's had through injury this season. Um, but yeah, really, really pleased when I saw that lineup come out. I don't think anyone would have really faulted it. For the most part, anyway.
And I think, in terms of seeing that same outfield, I think, it builds on that confidence, that momentum that we've developed after wins against Dunfermline and Dundee. However, maybe hoping for a fast start to the game didn't really materialise. We had Martin on the show from the Killie View podcast last week, and he thought that Killie would look to press us. I kind of felt they did to an extent, utilising Fraser Murray again, as Martin talked about. But for me, I found the whole first half very stuffy, two teams cancelling each other out, very few chances created. To be honest, really ruined by Nick Walsh.
Yeah, it wasn't Walsh's finest game. Not that the bar's ever really too high when it comes to officiating from him or from wider Scottish refs in general. But yeah, it was a very dour first half, to say the least. I think our pal Ewan put in a chat with me that that would be enough to probably get football banned as a sport, because it was just yeah, not the most entertaining watch. I think for the game as a whole, like you say, I think there's 28 fouls, 14 apiece
Mm.
for each side, and it felt like every foul stopped play for a stupidly long period of time, whether it was through Walsh deciding he had to talk to every single player about a foul, or from players rolling around when, 9 times out of 10 they probably didn't need to. But yeah, just a very cagey and stuffy affair for that first half, especially.
Yeah, and a couple of lengthy VAR checks, which we'll come on to in that first half as well. But Stephen McPhee Music saying that he was hearing Nick Walsh's whistle in his sleep last night, and I'm sure there'll be a few Aberdeen fans very similar, having PTSD of that. That's what I'll blame my poor sleep on from last night. In terms of, I want to speak about our front four in that first half, because when you win a game 1-0, yes, obviously the 3 points is satisfying, but we've had trouble, I think it's fair to say, over the last 2-3 months in the top end of the pitch. What did you make of the front four that started the game?
It was a weird one, because like I say, it was the front four that I think we kind of expected.
Hmm.
I think Killie lined up quite well, especially in terms of Ockles and Keskinen, didn't really give them the sort of space to get in behind them as often as they probably would have liked. I think Nisbet was unfortunate where, nothing would really stick for him. I thought he looked really good in general. Like, you can tell he looks a lot fitter than what he has.
Hmm.
And I thought he played quite a good game. Pape was rather frustrating for me in the first half. Felt like you were maybe playing with 10 men at times. He was there to be the out ball, and I don't think I seen him jump for a single header for 45 minutes. So it was a
Hmm.
little bit frustrating to watch. I think, as we sort of discussed the other week, he really thrived against Dundee when that goal came, and it afforded him the space. And
Hmm.
as we never got that goal until 91st minute, he was never really afforded that space prior to being hooked on about the hour mark. So it was a little bit frustrating. I don't think there was anything too bad in terms of the play. It was just one of those afternoons where nothing seemed to come off, that we would have hoped would have come off.
Do you think, I think you kind of make a good point, but do you think Killie got their tactics spot on then, in the sense that first half, to nullify the threat of our front four?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I mean, the sort of back five for the most part, really did well to kind of limit the gaps as well. I think that's maybe why Pape was a little bit frustrating to watch at times, because he
Mm.
he wasn't really afforded any time, and when he did, his options were tended to be pretty well marked in Nisbet or Keskinen. So, I think a lot of credit's got to be given to the way that Kelly set up defensively.
Yeah, and David McLennan pointing out that they out physicaled us for a lot of the first half, or as Weaselman says, assaulted us for a lot of the first half. JP picking up on the fact around Pape that he could have got a couple of assists, obviously, if Oko's goal was onside, and Topi had the chance. I actually remember the Topi chance where I thought he'd done kind of too much with the ball and the keeper was going to pick it up. But then he managed just to stab the ball into the kind of the middle of the goal, but there was nobody kind of on their toes. But I think for me, the biggest frustration in that first half was Pape's performance. And I think you make a good point in terms of how he thrives on the freedom. And I was like, I'd really like to see Leighton Clarkson come on. And I think when we kind of come on to the second half and speak about Leighton Clarkson and the impact of the substitutes, it maybe does highlight the performance or lack of from Pape. But again, in these kind of tight games, and I think there was, I don't know about you, Phil, but maybe a nervousness, is that the right word? After obviously Hibs getting the result in the early kickoff to be a point behind us, St Mirren winning at Ibrox, Dundee United winning, it felt like we had to win that game yesterday, which I think speaks volumes for the fact that we do go on to win that game, because certainly last month that team doesn't win that game. But fans kind of felt a little bit on edge. But again, on that side of the fans, I think we did a terrific job of sticking with the team for 90 minutes. But unfortunately, things didn't really stick for Pape. I felt the ball kept bouncing off of him, and then he tried a flick pass that was just never on and gave the ball away. And I think, again, some of our players are guilty of trying to be too fancy when the time is not on. And that's why I said previously, only Ante Palaversa should be allowed to be our show pony.
Yeah, it's like I say. I mean, I've got no doubts that Pape is quite key to how Jimmy wants to play. Um,
Hmm.
like I say, I just feel, as we've said so many times, and I think everyone has said across social media and the comments on this show, wherever it might be, that Pape is an enigma. Um, he is one of those players that sometimes it's going to come off, sometimes it's not. When it comes off,
Hmm.
it's absolutely brilliant. And when he's, at the top of his game, like he was during the run at the start of the season, he's a fabulous player to watch, but he does kind of have that element where he can frustrate. I mean, it's similar to Leighton Clarkson. I mean, I feel to be a player that's really successful in that number 10 role, you kind of have to be that sort of enigmatic player where um, you really you really do have to have that moment of magic, on a moment's notice. Just where that moment's notice is no wiser to any of us. But yeah, a little bit nervy, like you say, around the ground. I think especially when it looked like Rangers at 10 men, you're thinking, oh well, this could be St Mirren piling on pressure. Hibs obviously winning, Dundee United winning, everyone around us seeming to pick up points that were needed. Obviously then coming into the day, Hearts picking up points against St Johnstone as
Hmm.
well. It seemed like the sort of perfect moment for us to scuff our lines a little bit and drop points. But it was, yeah, it was good to see the crowd did stick with the team. I thought the Red Shed were brilliant. Very vocal from the South Stand.
Hmm.
The sort of scenes at full time as well were brilliant to see, and I think we're getting that connection back as we've mentioned quite a few times. So it's good to see that.
Yeah, I definitely feel there's that connection there, and obviously we'll come on to a couple of the incidents in the first half that kind of maybe showed the connection between the fans. But just a couple of comments from again folk watching us here live tonight. John Kilo speaking about Pape, since just to kind of finish off on that topic, saying teams are scared of him, and he does open up space for others, and I do think that is a fair point, especially with both for Ockles and Topi Keskinen as well. They're probably thriving with Pape in the team as well. So it it's a nice dilemma for Jimmy Tilleen to have, and obviously sat on a settled team for a few weeks now. It'll be interesting, obviously, when we come on to the Celtic game to speak about if there's going to be any changes. But one thing that has looked solid in this run of games is that centre back pairing now. Mats Knusters and Christers Tobers getting that run now, another clean sheet as well. They're just looking really solid. And you spoke kind of in December about how January is a very tough market to operate in, but our January signings are looking very shrewd at this moment in time, obviously with Dabbagh coming up and getting the winner as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'd sort of had Tobers down as sort of maybe one of my joint man the match. I thought he was superb once again. Knusters as well. Again, just I said it last week. The range of passing is phenomenal, and just how calm he is on the ball. They did well again to soak up the pressure of Kilmarnock when it came, and so I think as much as I'm not an XG merchant, as others are, Kelly only coming away from the game with a 0.33 expected
Hmm.
goals, I think is kind of testament to how well we did sort of defend them and limit the chances, even though at times it did feel like we were fairly under the cosh. I don't think there
Hmm.
was any moments where you were really thinking this could be an absolute disaster. I think as well, a lot of credit's got to be given to Meatov as well. Quite a fair few smart stops from
Hmm.
him. Didn't really show any signs of ring rust per se. Um, yeah, Jensen as well and McKenzie before obviously going off injured at half time also looked pretty solid at nullifying any sort of threat Killy had on the top
Hmm.
end of the pitch.
Yeah, and of course, as I said, in amongst that, we've not even mentioned Alexander Jensen, of course, who was another January acquisition in the I mean, quiet maybe by his standards, but another player that's impressing. Stephen McPhee was enjoying hospitality yesterday, gave him man of the match for the being the smilest guy he's ever met, and also felt a bit sorry for him for being maybe overwhelmed by the fans in the hospitality come full time. I don't know if Nick Walsh was overwhelmed or not, but he awarded Kelly a penalty in the first half, a penalty that nobody really claimed for player wise. I don't know about you if you could hear the Killie fans, but I don't really remember seeing them appeal. I, I don't know what Nick Walsh sees, but I couldn't believe he points to the spot there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone in the stadium, apart from Nick Walsh, felt that was a penalty. Um, None of the Aberdeen players looked overly worried that anything was going to be given. I didn't see a single Killie player really call for it. Didn't hear anything from my spot in the south
Mm,
of the Killie fans. Just a really baffling decision, and even more baffling that he somehow, I believe, gave Tobers a second booking despite having not been booked
yeah.
in the first place. Just an all round just absolute farce from Nick Walsh. And even when he was running over at the monitor, there was part of me that kind of felt like the time he stood there, he wasn't going to overturn it, which would
Mhm.
have been even more of a travesty. But yeah, glad that sense somehow prevailed in the end. Even more so as Robbie Dees was doing his best to wind up the south stand, as Kelly won the penalty, then got pelters right after it with the goal that wasn't to be that we'll come on to discuss. But to be fair to him, he took it in good stead at full time, sort of holding his hand up to the south stand and smiling and giving them the thumbs up. So as much as it did wind me up in that first half, I'll give a little bit of credit to Robbie Dees for having a bit of a sense of humour.
Yeah, well, Marley Watkins was convinced it was a penalty. I'm sure he was winding Nielsen up continuously, just kept pointing to the spot, being like, it's all right, we know it's going to get given. But not enough is being made of this whole showing of a red card. Sports Scene didn't pick it up. For all the analysis they did on the VAR talk from Ibrox. Similarly on Sky Sports, again, in-depth analysis of the VAR decisions at Ibrox, although there's bigger things to worry about down there just now. Um, and then again, they spoke about the penalty, and James McFadden today on Sky Sports saying, well, I can see why it wasn't a penalty because Tober's got a slight nick on the ball. But if he doesn't, it's a penalty. And I'm like, I still don't see anything from what I've seen back of the replays how that could even have been considered a penalty. But yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if I know we picked up a booking before the penalty, but I can't remember who it was. If it
It
was
was Palaversa, I believe.
was it Palaversa?
I
Well,
think so,
him and
yeah.
Tobers look nothing alike. But then what also confused me as well was the yellow card that was brandished was distributed to Nielsen for dissent, which I mean doesn't really come as a surprise because I was laughing from the first half when he was joking with Nick Walsh for when he pretended to head the ball and he just goes like bent over for about 2 minutes trying to explain it. He clearly can see the funny side of things from time to time, but yeah, just a total farce. And I'm glad that VAR worked in the right way for that one. I think I've seen someone say that's now three times we've conceded a penalty only for VAR to overturn it. But I think what then kind of added to the whole occasion for the injustice of the penalty award to then be overturned was for us to pretty much go up the other end of the pitch and for Jeppe Okels to find the back of the net. Now, Okels for me as a whole yesterday was quiet, but that finish, I mean, if that's a taste of what is to come, then that's going to whet the appetite for sure. Um, just disappointing that he was quite clearly offside.
Yeah, I mean, I think the past few weeks I've kind of said that I feel like something's coming. I feel like he looks like a superb winger. I was actually in this conversation walking up Markland Road with somebody um, when we were discussing the disallowed goal, and I sort of felt like that's the one thing he kind of needs to get off his back. I feel like a lot of people are kind of rightly or wrongly assuming that he should be contributing more on that front. And
Mhm.
I think it takes away from the fact that I think his all-round play as a winger is really, really solid. And again, I thought his delivery, for the most part, on Saturday was phenomenal again. Um, so I'm gutted that the goal didn't stand because it was a fair finish, and like you say, it felt like some sort of poetic justice for the absolute shambles of the penalty decision. Um, and obviously you could see how much it meant to him wheeling
Mm.
off to the corner flag, thinking he'd opened his Don's account. But I think it'll just be a matter of time until that first official goal comes. And like you say, if he can add that string to his bow, then the potential transfer fee we're looking at pay Preston could be well worth it.
Yeah, well, Tuesday would be a fine time to get his first Aberdeen goal if he wants to do it that. I suppose that would make the full time score about 4-1. But yeah, I think it was also ironic as well with the defending after the last episode when Martin was on here, speaking about Lewis Mayo and how solid he was. It was his mistake that led to the opportunity. Obviously, as we said, well taken, but correctly ruled for offside. Um, I guess adding to the nature of the stuffy first half was the stop-start nature of injuries. Jack McKenzie picking up an injury and having to go off. Unfortunately, the second half kind of started in the same vein. His replacement, Nicky Devlin, picking up quite a nasty-looking head injury, but Jimmy Tulline speaking to Rob McLean at full time, saying that it was more of a shoulder injury, so he's going to be assessed between now and Tuesday. I do wonder though if there was a little bit of a head injury there, if concussion played a part, because Nicky Devlin unfortunately couldn't continue much longer, and was then replaced by Graham Shinney, throwing back the years, moving into left back. I guess that opens up a debate for again Tuesday night, but potentially going forward, because there will be fans wanting to see Graham Shinney in this team. Does Graham Shinney work at a left back at the expense of Nicky Devlin and Jack McKenzie?
It's a tough one. I mean, just going back to sort of earlier points, like you say, it's a tough old afternoon for Jensen. I thought, he was right back, left back, right back, and I
Yeah.
felt like every single time he started to get a little bit of purchase, he would
Hmm.
get moved. As soon as he started getting the beating and getting up the wing, you know, Mackenzie goes off, so he's into left back, and then Devlin goes off, he's back into right back. And like you say, full time, Devlin coming out with ice sort of strapped to the shoulder, and then looked like he was in a sling. From the photos I saw at full
Mm.
time. Afterwards, a few of my pals that were in hospitality
Mm.
had a photo of a slinged up Devlin. But I thought Graham came on and did really well at left back. I think it was the right time for the subs to come. At that
Mhm.
65th minute, it did really freshen up that team. And I think it gave us that little bit, effectively gave us an extra midfielder in a way. Because I
Mhm.
did start to feel we were getting overrun a tad in that midfield. So it was good to kind of have his extra legs in there. Whether he could play 90 minutes is a different question. I don't know if he would have it
Yeah.
in him, especially, going into Tuesday night. He'd be coming up against arguably, it's not even arguably, coming up against the best winger in the league, Nicholas Kuhn.
Hmm.
It would be a tough old evening for him to have to try and deal with him for 90 minutes. But I don't think it's a bad option to have. Like you say, to be playing at this stage in his career with, the illness that he has, um, is incredible. Um, whether he could play with that illness and with his lack of legs at left back for the remainder of the season, I'm not too convinced.
Yeah, well, maybe speak about that a little bit more for the Tuesday night part of this podcast, because obviously when Nicholas Kuhn comes off for Celtic just now, Jota comes on, so it'll be a long night for whoever's at left back on Tuesday. But I felt on Saturday that the game, even in the second half, continued to be stop start. Again, I was trying to think of chances that we created. And I hope the Killie goalkeeper wasn't planning on having kids anytime soon, because Topi Keskinen's put paid to that for a few weeks, that's for sure. Because, I mean, well, fair play for keeping the ball out, but that is going to hurt, I'm sure, today.
Yeah, I mean, I never noticed it at first. And from where I was in the south, it looked like he just kind of either saved it, just with his sort of torso or whatever. It wasn't until I sort of went back and watched sports, went, that's a stinger. I can see why he's gone down now, and I retracted my shouts of dig a hole after seeing that back. But yeah, a great little slide ball through from Pape into Tope to get on the end of that. And I think as well, you know, the only other one that really sticks out in my head is Nisbet's chance. Um, his absolute love-hate relationship with that left-hand post. My word, I think he's hit that specific post about 4 or 5 times in the past month or two. Really unfortunate. It was one of those ones. If it maybe felt a Dabbagh on his stronger left foot, you're maybe
Mhm.
seeing that going at the bottom corner. But really unlucky for Kevin because, like I say, I thought he had a good afternoon that potentially deserved a goal, and obviously maybe keep that purple patch going a bit longer.
Yeah, and did you think when that hit the post it wasn't going to be our day in terms of collecting all 3 points?
Somewhat, somewhat. It kind of felt like, again, I think just after the afternoon of things struggling to stick and like you say, the game just becoming really stuffy, it did feel like it was going to be one of those nil-nils where you just kind of went home, not necessarily heartbroken, but just a little bit
Hmm.
deflated and a bit more just like, God, that was a waste of
Where
an
a draw
afternoon.
feels like a defeat.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think though Kaiser sums that up. The Nisbet chance was our best move of the game, and I thought in the last 20 minutes we were back to our kind of free flowing best. I thought Shaden Morris had a real impact. To echo what David McLennan's put in the comments, I thought Leighton Clarkson as well probably had his best game for weeks. Maybe the kick up the backside he needed. Um, Sitting on the bench for a few weeks, maybe just needed the break. Obviously, I know he's had the good news in his personal life, so that's maybe going to give him a little bit of energy as well. But uh, I guess maybe surprising for some was Ante Palaversa coming off for Leighton Clarkson, and then us going two up top. Were you surprised, happy, encouraged by the fact that we, saw the Jimmy Tilleen of old with that positive substitutions going to try and win that game?
Yeah, no, I think definitely. I think obviously Palaversa had quite a good game once again. Um, like I say, I'm pretty sure he was booked in the first half, so whether it was to
Hmm.
maybe watch that, but as well, I think out of the two midfielders, I thought Nielsen had a really good game. I think he started to come back onto the sort of impact that he had early on in the year. Really, really solid from him. But yeah, to not sit on our laurels and actually try and push for that win and make a lot of a change in the attacking end, I think was really good to see. I thought when Dabbagh came on, the game totally changed. As we were saying earlier, where things weren't really sticking for Pape,
Hmm.
Dabbagh gave us such a great outball. Really, really physical. Really, really quick at getting in behind as well. A really, really good first showing for him.
Yeah, and I think, we spoke last week about how sharp and energetic he looked in just that short cameo. Obviously, we got to see it more. And I think his substitution brought a little bit more positivity to the crowd because it was a new signing, the Middle Eastern Miovski, as I'm going to call him, because the way he moves off the shoulder of the last defender, there's so much similarity to that. I thought he was unlucky when he tried to get the ball out his feet on the edge of the box, but was kind of closed down and looked very much like he wanted to put onto his left foot. Um, but yeah, that kind of really lifted the crowd, and you felt the momentum in terms of what team was going to win that game in the last 20 minutes was only ever going to be Aberdeen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I think the introduction of Dava really gave that extra injection into the crowd. Like you say, the sort of little flicks that he was trying to pull out to link the play. His willingness to chase everything down. And I think as well credit to Shaden Morris for that as well. His electric nature on that right wing seemed to beat his man every single time, as we keep saying, with the exact same move that he's used for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Somehow worked every time and got him to the byline. So it was good to see him getting back amongst it a little bit. But yeah, and I think the introduction of the substitutes feeding out into the stands really did push us on to victory because, like I say, those last sort of 20 minutes,
Hmm.
the red shed in particular was fantastic. It's the most vocal I've heard them in a while at Pittodrie.
Yeah, and I think that's just because, as I said, it was a stuffy game. But we were doing what we could to try and win the game. It wasn't for a lack of effort on our part. And I think it, as I said, it plays into the fact that at that point, last 20 minutes, we knew the results from around the ground was it's really important we go out and get that 3 points. One, to keep us in third place, and then looking ahead to midweek, Dundee United and Hibs play each other. I was going to ask you, what do you think from an Aberdeen point of view is the best result for that game at Tannadice from an Aberdeen point of view?
I mean, it's a tough one, obviously just with us being at Celtic Park,
Exactly.
you're probably, as much as folk might say I'm being a bit negative, you're probably looking at defeat there, and I think that is just purely off the back of this week. Um, Probably a draw.
Yeah.
Just keep things as is as much as possible. Is probably the best from our perspective. But yeah, like you say, I think as the sort of results were known around Pittodrie, you kind of felt the red shed suck that ball into the net come the 90th minute, because it was just so vitally important that we didn't lose any unneeded ground.
Yeah, exactly. As Sam Gordon replied to us on Twitter, we were waiting all day for that goal yesterday. And I guess when the goal went in, as the title of this podcast did, it sent the fans Yabba Dabba Doo. And it really was so important that the Dons got the 3 points in the bag. I think I'm done. But
Those were some fan dabba puns, Glenn.
yes, they were. You can tell the dad jokes and the puns have been planned for the last half hour. But what a finish. I don't think, and I think, credit to Richard from the social media side of the club for putting out the goal in slow-mo to really emphasize the quality of the finish. And take away nothing from Kevin Nisbet's chest down as well. I'm sure he'll be stacking that up on his assist chart. But I think the best thing about that video actually is the fact that the drum beat finishes as the ball leaves Dabagh's foot, and the silence as the ball then hits the net, just followed by a roar. Honestly, there's nothing better than watching a football video as the ball travels towards the net and there's just that hush before the cheer. Oh, inject it.
It was superb, and like I say, I mean, I'll keep on going on about it. I think that the scenes in the Red Shed, even at full time, were just superb. It's been a while since you felt like majority of the stadiums kind of hung around for a little bit after full time.
Mhm.
So it was great to see, across the ground, that people were staying behind to allow the players to have that lap of honour, which has probably felt like a distant memory for most of them.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there was a few regretting leaving the game early, and that's certainly, for me, normally at the end of full time leaving up the back because Roy's been wanting home for about half an hour, but yesterday was the first time he never asked to leave the game once. So for me, that's the first time as well, staying that long after full time as well. Certainly friends that would normally be like, "Oh, I saw you sneaking out," and they were the ones sneaking out beforehand before me. So I made the point of getting one up on that. But yeah, I think overall an absolutely massive 3 points. And as I said, if you think back to January, certainly November, December, that team probably don't turn that point into three.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's, hopefully a sign of the sort of switch back in mentality, and the sort of switch back in our fortunes as well. That, it's not the easiest game to try and build on from, but that we try our best to build on from Saturday's win.
We do, and I guess in Rob McLean's wisdom in terms of his questioning, when he said how important it is to keep that winning run going, probably forgetting that we're playing Celtic next, and just shows how generic the questions he asks are. How difficult, I guess, will it be that then when we head to Celtic Park on Tuesday to keep that winning run going? it, how much more important it is to keep confidence up, because we've seen obviously when we went there in October, we came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2. We ran them close at Pittodrie. So maybe this game shouldn't have the fear factor that playing Celtic in the past has previously held.
No, I don't think that playing any team in the league should have any sort of fear factor. It's cliched, but at the end of the day, it's 90 minutes, 11 on 11. Anything can happen. We've seen, maybe surprising results this season. Queen's Park knocking Rangers out the cup, Hibs winning on Saturday, St Mirren winning on Saturday. Even us, coming from 2-0 down to secure a point at Parkhead early on in the season, probably nobody would have expected.
Mhm.
So I don't think there should be any fear. It's obviously going to be a difficult game. You're playing the best team in the country. at their ground. They've just come off the back of a loss, which tends to sort of G them up, which is a bit frustrating for us because that'll be the second time we've kind of played them off the back of a loss where they've tried to pick themselves back up. Obviously, the game at hand, and I believe came off the back of a European scudding against
Mm-hmm.
Dortmund. So there's no doubt it's going to be difficult. Like you say, I think it's important that confidence remains. Anything could happen. We could, I could be being overtly negative here by almost writing the game off immediately. But if you are going to lose, just make sure it's not hammed in 6-0 again. And like I say, just give us something to build off of. But if somehow between Saturday and Tuesday something seems to click, like I said, I believe I saw a comment earlier on just before we came live about the potential partnership of Dabbagh and Nisbet, being what Jimmy wants to build in that sort of front line. Could you be looking at going really bold and two up top and try to take the game to them, which I think is really important, not to just sort of try and soak up pressure because you're eventually going to crumble against a front line as good as that. So it'll be really interesting. Like I say, it's an unfortunate timing that's coming off the back of a loss, but I think it'll be an interesting game and it'll be again a good sort of way to benchmark where the team is.
Yeah, I'll bring that comment up when we come on to speak about the Aberdeen team. But was the result yesterday for Celtic probably worst case scenario for us? Obviously they had the late heartbreak in Munich, which was hilarious from putting them out because boys, do us as Aberdeen fans know how many times we've suffered late heartbreak at the hands of Celtic. But then to follow that up with a domestic defeat, and actually probably the result maybe not the worst thing, but the VAR controversy that followed in that game with the should the second goal was the ball in or out. For the record, I don't think it was out. But again, the pressure that whoever's refereeing this game is now going to be under following Brenda's outburst at a full time probably also doesn't do us any favors.
No, absolutely not. I mean, like you say, they'll be out to try and prove a point. I think the fact that from an Aberdeen perspective, a Celtic win was way better for us than a Hibs win. As funny as it is to see Celtic get beat, um, it is something that we didn't need in terms of positions on the table, and how close teams are getting around us. Um, Conversely, I know that Branda had his outburst about the officiating. Obviously, he's not going to mention the fact that Greg Taylor really probably should have been sent off for a terrible challenge. But it's not like Celtic to get decisions, is it? Um, so I think it'll be, yeah, it'll be the age old classic of going down and you're playing 12 off the bat. The crowd's going to be on the referee's back. The player Callum McGregor will be doing what he does and escape
Mm-hmm.
and book him for 90 minutes despite being in the ref's ear all game. Um, Brendan will probably, have had a word pre-match. Um, so like I say, there should be no fear, but by no means is it going to be you can't say it's going to be an easy game.
It's playing Celtic's never easy, and as I said, we're speaking about the positives from last time out against Parkhead at Parkhead, sorry, where we probably could have taken all 3 points. We're speaking about a positive performance at Pittodrie, which ultimately produced 0 points. So we're speaking about positives, but in terms of points that we've taken from the two games, it's only one. In terms of positives, can we take anything from the way Hibs, took the game to Celtic? Of course, this is going to be Celtic's third game in 7 days. Um, Tiredness, maybe clutching at straws here, hopefully affects them. Are we exposing ourselves if we try and take the game to Celtic in the opening exchanges?
I don't think we are exposing ourselves. I think, not even just the Hibs game, or even this season. I think Celtic have shown that they're beatable. And the way that teams tend to beat them is by try to take the game to them. If
Mm,
if you sit in and try and soak up Celtic's pressure, it's eventually going to break because they've got players that are, very good quality footballers, that will eventually, find a gap and will break a team down. Um, Tiredness as well. It's potentially a factor, but again, Celtic's got the resources where they
Hmm.
can rest their, uh, now what is it, 30 million they're rumouring that Kuhn's going to Newcastle for potentially in the summer. Rest him for their previously sold £30 million winger in Jota. So the quality and their depth as well is just on a level that nobody can really compete with in the league.
Hmm.
Um, so like I say, you're always up against the odds, but you know Hibs have shown that with a team that maybe isn't stacked with the greatest quality in the world, um, as long as they line up well and play into their strengths, that there's every possibility. Like I say, it's a 90-minute game, um, where anyone can win.
Yeah, and I think we've, as much as it's easy for us to sit here and fear the worst, like we do every time we preview a game against Celtic, there are cases to be optimistic about us looking to expose some weaknesses in that Celtic team. And I think Hibs exposed their backline extremely well. Um, but I think you're right in terms of what Celtic have in terms of squad depth and rotation. I mean, could hurt any team in this league. And that's all other 11 teams. I'm not going to say it's only 10 other teams. Um, I think though, in terms of the way we approach the game, I think it's interesting hearing you say that we've kind of got nothing to lose in terms of if we take the game to Celtic, because that's how other teams have benefited. Um, and Hibs especially, Hibs has now beaten Celtic twice. No, not beaten them twice, but they've run them close in the first game, but then obviously beat them at Easter Road. So we've shown as well, as I said in October, that we can take the game. Now, you mentioned the comment from VK at the top of the show before we came live, and his comment was around Obday Dabbagh looking more lively and creative than Kevin Nisbet or Pape, and he should be starting ahead of them at the next game. Is there a case i- for me that we could actually probably start both Dabbagh and Kevin Nisbet? Um, Again, some people in the comments as well speaking about Kevin Nisbet's lack of pace. Maybe Obday offers a bit more in terms of getting behind the Celtic backline. But I think it'd be a really kind of a positive statement of intent from Jimmy Tulline if we did go with two up top in this game.
Yeah, no, I think there's a very good case for the pair of them to start. I thought their partnership looked quite good on Saturday. They seemed, I think it's because they're two players that are sort of out and out strikers that are potentially
Hmm.
used to playing in a two, unlike sort of Gay, where he's either used to being out on the wing or in that 10. I feel like they had quite a good bet. I think Nisbet's track record this season, he has kind of been ineffective in games like, if you're playing against Celtic, Rangers, even the Hibs game at times, he can look a little bit sort of out of place. But I also feel like he was really struggling for fitness. Up until now, I feel like he looks like a completely different player in terms of his sort of hunger, his drive, and just overall how much fitter he looks as a person. Um, so I would not be opposed to seeing the two of them start together. And as well, if the game does start to get a little bit, you know, hopefully we're potentially 1-0 up,
Hmm.
or if it's 0-0 and the game starts to get a little bit more stretched as Celtic try and pile on some pressure. It's like I said earlier, it's potentially the perfect moment to bring Gay off the bench, fresh legs with him with a little bit more space, and he can kind of drag defenders like Trusty, who a lot of Celtic fans aren't really keen on, and see him as that weak link in the back
Hmm.
line, um, and sort of cause problems that way. It would be interesting to see.
I guess kind of on the flip side, Paul Buchan suggests putting Tope, Pape, and Obday Dabbagh um, to start the game on Tuesday. And I think the case for Pape in this game is an interesting one because, again, he is pacey when he gets those legs moving in the right direction and not tangled underneath him. But I think also for me around Pape starting this game is he offers us a height and a threat from any set pieces that we could actually then, put into the box rather than, tapping around the edge. Because I noticed again, yesterday we went back to playing out from the back rather than just pumping the ball long from goal kicks. I don't know if that maybe says more about Mitov's ability to do that compared to Ross Doohan. But I think that's the one thing in these sort of games where, we speak about teams needing to take their chances when they go to Celtic Park or Ibrox. Well, Pape offers us a threat from set pieces. We saw that in the Dunfermline game. And if Ante Palaversa is starting, we know he's got the ability to put a decent ball into the box as well.
Yeah, I think there's no doubts Pape offers a threat and he can offer us an out ball, but I think he's got to actually be in that headspace to be up for playing that role. Like I was saying, I felt like on Saturday against Kilmarnock, he wasn't really up for that, and it did just kind of cause detriment because whenever we did go long, it felt like the ball was then just immediately back in our half as someone like Lewis May or Robbie Dees won it and nodded it back in. I think there's a case for Pape to start in the sense of he gets fouled so often,
Mm-hmm.
because he's just his long legs just seem to get clipped all the time, and it's potentially chances like that. We've seen how good Tobers has been. Winning headers from free kicks and corners. So, potentially if you're under the caution looking to just win some ground, using him as a sort of runner that's going to get filled and get you some yards potentially. But I don't think there really is a wrong way we can go about it. I think
Mm-hmm.
the attacking options we have all offer something slightly different. And I think they've all shown their worth in one way or another. So I don't think, however that front line comes out on Tuesday night, I don't think there's really going to be a scenario where I'm too gutted unless it looks like it's Peter Ambrose as a lone striker, and he's getting thrown under the bus at Parkhead for one reason or another. But I feel like for the most part, I don't think there's going to be a scenario where I'm really going to be against the choice.
Yeah, and Kaiser suggesting putting Pape out on the right wing against Greg Taylor, although it could be Jeffrey Schlupp at a left back again. So it'll be interesting to see if that's obviously an option because we know he can cause damage out on the wing, but that would of course be at the expense of Tope. Um, I just don't see us changing that midfield too much. As you said, I think Nielsen had an incredible game. Again, it's funny because what he does to constitute an incredible game, he does very quietly, keeps the dirty side of the game kind of under wraps. So, he's not a player that, stands out to a lot of people as him having a good game. But again, I think that influence he has on the referee, you spoke about Callum McGregor niggling in the referee's ear. I think Nielsen does just as much a job. Probably annoys the referee a hell of a lot more because fucking hell, he's got a pair of lungs on him, and shouts his head off. I think him and Palaversa have got a lot to do in that midfield on Tuesday if it's them two that's starting. I think for me, I don't want to see Tuesday's game being another case of 4 or 5 changes because things are starting to click with this team. So personally, I'd only like to see a couple of changes. And to be honest, I think that is going to come defensively. If Jack McKenzie and Nicky Devlin both are not fit enough to start the game, that does leave the question mark on who plays left back. Colin Gale put a comment about potentially putting Alfie Dorrington into there. I don't think he is an out and out left back. So does then that open up the door for Graham Shinnie to be starting left back up against Nicholas Kuhn or Jota?
Hey, I mean it's very very probable. Like I said, I don't really think he looked that off it. I mean, I don't know how many years it had been since he'd played there. And like I say, last time I recall it was in his days at Cali, because I believe he was immediately thrust into that midfield role when he joined us. Um, he did not look out of place at all. And like I said, it potentially is something that would work well for us. It effectively gives us that extra body in the midfield at times, which playing against Celtic tends to be where they retain most of the ball. So having that extra body there maybe does benefit us. But yeah, looking a little bit slim. Even if we still had James McGarry, he's now injured anyway
Yeah.
during his loan spell. So regardless, our fullback options would be at an all-time low.
Yeah, no, Jesus, his injury luck must be at an absolute all-time low. I think he's facing 6 weeks out with a knee injury. And speaking of um, loans and things not working out, the whole Adam Memsley being recalled for a few weeks and then returning to Cove, as was announced over the weekend, all seems very, very strange. And, speaking to a few people kind of in the Cove hierarchy, I think even they were a bit surprised to see Adam Emsley recalled to Aberdeen, because in their opinion, he wasn't a player that was kind of hitting the heights as maybe was expected only until recently. And if any of the players that they had on their books that they were expecting to be recalled, it would have been Finlay Marshall. So I think it even came as a bit of a surprise to Cove. But I'm certainly sure that they are delighted to have Adam back for the running in League One. All just seemed a bit strange there.
Yeah, a bit of an odd one. Like I said, I don't think, and I think it was a harsh time as well. Obviously, Cove coming to play Livy in the Scottish Cup. I
Yeah.
don't think it would have made that much of a difference. Obviously, Livy are kind of, frustratingly, for those of us that don't want to see Livy coming back up and flying high in the Championship. Um, but yeah, a strange one. Like John's put in the comments there that, was there potentially an injury that Jimmy just kind of wanted to assess whilst he
Mhm.
was out? But I feel like Cove probably would have made that known if there was an injury. It's like I say, he seemed to be started every week for the most part. Um, but yeah, I mean, at least he's back out somewhere where he's going to be getting game time, which I suppose is a positive as opposed to just kind of sitting with us and not doing anything.
Mm. Yeah, interesting there. You mentioned about Livy obviously grabbing a 96-minute winner. They're out of that championship race is really hotting up. Out of that three teams, Ayr, Livy, and Falkirk, which one would you want to see come up to hopefully replace St Johnstone?
Probably Falkirk, and I think it's just because I have fond memories of going down there whilst I was younger. It was, I think, one of my first away days was down at Falkirk, and I mean, you know, no doubts they're kind of a somewhat big team in sort of terms of Scottish football, that probably should have been up before now potentially, but yeah, Falkirk are Ayr for me. Livy, I can take or leave, mainly because any other time I've gone there, it's been the worst game of football I think I've ever seen.
Well, I've only been to Livingston's ground once, and that was the opening game of the season, that 0-0 under Barry Robson, and I'm never going back. Terrible game of football, terrible pitch. But yeah, I would take Falkirk. As I said, if it's at the expense of St Johnstone as well, got some great memories of Falkirk, and also it's where I first remember seeing Kasper Schmeichel play. I remember Gary Dempsey scoring. I don't actually think there was a stand behind that goal at the time when Gary Dempsey scored. And then, of course, on that League Cup winning run as well, that Vernon hat trick down there that night as well was a really good night. In terms of just rounding things off from this episode as well, of course, when we've kind of come live tonight, there's also been other news going on in Scottish football, but this comment really tickled me from Kaiser saying the San Fran Sevco 2012ers have just sacked Philip Clement. What a chance this season was for us to finish second, and we blew it. I mainly appreciated the comment for the Americanism on the name, given the other off-field talk around that. But again, seeing that result from Ibrox on Saturday, it does really feel like we've missed out on an opportunity with that awful run of form we've been on. But hopefully, we've written a few wrongs and got ourselves back on track.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping they don't get somebody competent in. Is my, is my only hope. I
Yeah,
was quite enjoying another incompetent Philip involved in Scottish football alongside myself. So I'm just hoping that this is maybe the start of another decline, along with their HMRC investigation for that sport and science grant
yeah,
that's
I
going
know.
on.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if the sports scientist has been let go or not, but I'm sure it wasn't a cheap payoff. And if their ply to go back into admin was sacking Clement, then I'm all here for the work that he's done to financially ruin them some more. So we'll take the small victories, even though a larger victory would have been him seeing out his current contract, I'm sure, for the rest of us. But in terms of all things Aberdeen, we head to Celtic Park on Tuesday night. The game is live on Sky Sports, 8 o'clock kickoff. Myself and Phil, and hopefully Callum as well, will be back at full time live here on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel, reviewing all the action. So please, God, let that not be a 6-0, although mine is obviously flight dependent if I make it back from Shetland on time, weather being fine. Looking forward to catching up with a few folk in Shetland tomorrow night as well, so I'll catch up with them then. And thank you to everybody that has tuned into this episode of Red Tinted Glasses live or on catch up. Remember to leave a like, comment your thoughts, or follow us on audio platforms. Until next time.